This podcast is brought to you by Flipper, a marketplace to buy and sell websites, stores, and digital real estate. Plot your own path. Become a boss by buying a small online business at Flipper. Simply visit flipper.com/tech talks for a free consultation and 50% off fees. That's FLIPPA, flipper.com/tech talks. If you do visit, let me know how you get on. But now, let's get the show started.
Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, before we begin today's show, I want to give a special shout out to a couple of listeners out there. First of all, we have Brian Hayes, and he said, "This is one of my favourite podcasts because Neil features an incredible variety of guests and topics and highlights so many areas of innovation that he would have never had any idea about. So thank you so much, Neil." No, Brian, thank you so much. I'm going to stand up and salute you. And finally, we have Grusha. I hope I've spelled your name right there. Grusha. And they said, "Cheers on your podcast. Looking forward to your next episodes." So a big thank you to both of you. And one of the reasons that this means so much to this podcast is because, like every other podcaster out there, I'm a slave to the algorithm, or at least the podcast is a slave to algorithms. And essentially every listen, every rating, every review will feed that algorithm. And the more you get, the more likely the podcast is going to be put in front of new listeners via those little banners underneath that said, "Hey, you like this podcast? Why not try this?" So anything that bumps the show up the rankings a little bit will hopefully increase our community and use technology to bring people together, which is what this podcast is all about. But you don't tune in for any form of me digitally begging for ratings and reviews. What we do try and do on here is take a trending topic in technology and try to learn more about it in a language that everyone can understand. Because I think only then can your business or you as an individual understand how that technology could deliver value to you in your world. And today's topic is Extended Threat Detection and Response, which you may have seen abbreviated to XDR. And it is a huge emerging hot category at the moment. And a company called Hunters has become the first autonomous threat hunting solution that is also a pure play vendor-agnostic XDR startup that has been noted in a Gartner report and even featured on the front page of TechCrunch recently. And for CrowdStrike users, Hunters also extends threat detection beyond the endpoint and enables XDR capabilities. So I wanted to find out more about this subject, and hopefully we can all learn a thing or two together today. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Tel Aviv in the startup nation of Israel so we can speak with Uri May from Hunters. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, Neil, absolutely. My name is Uri May. I'm the CEO of an Israeli cybersecurity company called Hunters, and I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited to get you on because Extended Threat Detection and Response, XDR, is an emerging hot category at the moment. And what I always try and do on this podcast is bring in some of these hot topics and try and put them in a language that everyone can understand. So can you set the scene and tell the listeners a little bit more about exactly what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, XDR is basically the industry answer to the gap we currently have between security products. Most of the environments customers have today is encompasses of a high number of single point solutions that monitors different parts of the attack surface. Basically, they all lack the ability to see through all of it. And the XDR is that connective tissue between all of those single point solutions.
I think just to help bring this to life, can you tell me a little bit more about how XDR has gone on to emerge as this almost next-gen successor to endpoint detection and response security information and event management solutions? Because it seems like there's this whole journey here, isn't there?
Yeah, so I think that EDR vendors brought a game-changing technology to fight endpoint threats. Nowadays, bigger parts of the organizational attack surface is basically outside the endpoint. We're talking about SaaS applications and cloud environments, mobile devices, IoT, etc. And basically, we want to take the EDR approach and expand that across all of the parts of the attack surface. And I think that's where XDR comes into place. And regarding the SIEM, the security information and event management systems, the SIEM is now doing what it should be doing, basically log collection and aggregation. They also have some security analytics capabilities, but those most of the time requires a pretty high level of expertise and experience from the operators and the people at the SOC. And with that expansion that we see in the attack surface that we mentioned earlier and the sophistication level that attackers are using, we basically can't really assume that customers would have the ability to do all of that customization and rule definitions and workflow analysis on their own. And then they're kind of looking at the vendors, and in this case, XDR vendors, to be able to generate more of out-of-the-box value for all of the security analytics use cases.
So as someone that's working right in the heart of this industry, what is it that you think is different about XDR, and what does it bring to the IT security stack that we've not had until now?
Yeah, so an impactful XDR product would basically have a significant delta on top of all of the underlying products, meaning the endpoint products and the network products and cloud and identity, etc. And that delta is measurable basically in detection accuracy, which is let's detect more using all of that data with more accuracy, meaning less noise and faster. And for response, we're talking about let's be able to respond faster and have higher situational awareness to the incidents that we're responding to, without requiring the highest level of security operators. That usually that's the case now. So yeah, I think that both detection and response, meaning detection accuracy and response efficiency, would be something that XDR products could definitely impact.
And from what I've been reading, I believe that XDR finds the signals that are legitimate threats, but most importantly, while filtering out all the noise. But can you expand on that just to help people listening understand just what a game changer it can be?
Yeah, so XDR is all about the deep integration with the underlying sensor layers. So when we're talking about the threat that we're now missing, mostly it's because we can't officially connect the dots. And we either rely on humans or primitive and naive correlation that are currently done in the SIEM and the SOAR. XDR is basically taking that correlation to the next level and taking those weak signals that are almost impossible to monitor when you're looking just at them and trying to correlate a bunch of them together, basically generate incidents that comprised of low fidelity signals. And the combination of those signals can generate really high confidence stream of alerts, because the probability of each one of them happening independently is really high, but the probability of them happening around the same entities and around the same identities is way lower. So yeah, I think that's the case that we're trying to make around detection accuracy and the ability to detect more threats, without necessarily the noise that sometimes adjusted with those more elusive kind of signals.
And now you've perfectly set the scene there. I think it's a great opportunity to introduce what you guys are doing with Hunters.AI, which I believe is the first autonomous threat hunting solution and is a pure play vendor-agnostic XDR startup that has been noted in a recent Gartner report. But can you tell me a little bit more about exactly what it is that makes Hunters.AI so unique in this space at the moment?
So I think that it comprises of three main different aspects. The first of it is basically the expertise and knowledge that we bring into the table around how attackers operate in different attack surfaces. And one of the biggest things that are important for us is to be able to engineer that expertise and understanding into the technology and into what we brought to the market. So that's one thing. The other thing is the level of automation and automatic decision making that we're doing. the idea behind Hunters is, and that's where the autonomous word came into our tagline, is to generate as high level value as possible without requiring more talented or more human power, brain power in general. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is basically our ability to integrate into a big variety of products across categories without the need of deploying any agents or sensors or scanners into the customer's environment.
And one of the things that put you on my radar is, in fact, it's been a huge couple of weeks for you, because just a few weeks ago, you were on the front of TechCrunch. I think you had a $15 million Series A funding. So can you tell me a little bit more about that? It must have been a crazy time.
Yeah, so raising money is never easy. Raising money during a world pandemic is, at least in my experience, which is very little, it's the first time that I've done it, was very hard. But we're very lucky to have 3 new amazing backers, USVP, M12, which is Microsoft Venture Arms, and Okta Ventures, which are truly believers in the Hunters vision. Basically, there's a lot of tech still to develop and a lot of product work, but we're taking our early steps in go-to-market, and we already have a decent number of customers, most of them in the US market, that we're happy to serve and help them control the environment and detect and respond better to breaches that are going on in the environment. And we're excited from expanding those go-to-market efforts as well as continuing developing the exciting parts of the data science aspects of our technology.
And I'm curious, just for any startup founders that might be listening out there, when something like that happens to you as a founder, and you've got the $15 million series funding, and you're on the front page of TechCrunch there, did you get a lot of renewed interest and a lot of engagement from an article like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that always the goal behind a funding PR should always be not the funding PR. It should be, in our case, it was customers' re-engagement and interaction, like you articulated, Neil, and sometimes it's raising the interest of potential partners. And definitely, I think that specifically for the customer case, customers are looking for stability. Big funding rounds usually mean stability. And I can say, just from my experience selling enterprise software to US companies, one of the things that concerns them the most is the volatility around startups. And basically, we're deploying this Israeli product now in our network, but what will happen next year? Are they here to stay? And having significant amount of funding from top-tier VCs is something that really helps establish that maturity and that stability that customers are looking for.
I've had countless emails from listeners over the last few weeks talking about their fears and concerns around job security, while also seeing their interest rates on their savings drop considerably. And as a result, many are beginning to look at how they can invest in their future in an uncertain time. Could digital assets be the answer? Now, you might remember that I spoke to Blake Hutchinson, CEO at Flipper, on episode 1194 about how to buy digital assets and websites. In a nutshell, Flipper is a marketplace that you can buy and sell websites, stores, and digital real estate that are just ready to go. So if you do have dreams of running your own successful online business, or perhaps you're looking to exit your existing online business, my friends at Flipper can help you buy and sell. So if you're interested and want to find out more, please visit flipper.com/techtalks. That's FLIPPA.com/techtalks for a free consultation and also 50% off all fees. But now, back to the interview. For any business leaders or decision makers listening, or people in the cybersecurity industry, can you tell me a little bit more about how Hunters grants those XDR capabilities that we were talking about a few moments ago, using AI for autonomous threat hunting? Because again, it feels like a big moment here, but can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so AI is being used in the platform in two main areas. First of all, we have a scoring system that is able to take those low fidelity signals that we extract from the raw data, as well as detections that other vendors are generating, and basically automatically extract more features around those signals and then score them. How confident we are at the signal that we're now looking at, and what's the maliciousness level of that signal. The second part is our proprietary graph, where all of those signals and the detections are getting loaded into, as well as the entities that we extracted and the relationships and the organizational context that customers are loading into that graph. And all of that knowledge is represented in a way that basically machines and computers can run machine learning algorithms on them, process them automatically, and find those attack stories that we mentioned earlier. And that's, I think, the combination between that scoring system and that unique graph technology that we've built is basically a very strong infrastructure that allow us and in the future also customers and partners to encode their understanding of how attackers operate in different environments into something that is truly scalable and machine-led and can work on terabytes and petabytes of data in the speed of light. And that's basically what we believe that is required for the big problem in cybersecurity, which is detection and response.
And what is it that you think, or why is it that you think that a vendor-agnostic approach is so essential to success in something like this?
Yeah, so in cybersecurity today, there's a bunch of product categories, and sometimes you just it's hard to remember all of them. But when you just to name a few, you have endpoint products and secure web gateways and email protection systems and cloud infrastructure and cloud workload protections and NDRs and NTA and firewalls, and all of those market categories have really interesting technologies and products in them from different vendors. And there aren't a lot of vendors that have, I would say, a cross-category kind of offering. And so from our perspective, we want access to as much data as possible to build the best stories that we can and uncover the biggest amount of threats that we can. We talked about it earlier when we talked about that delta. And then the other thing that customers already, in most cases, have already defined their own best-of-breed stack. They know the environment and they made concise choices about the product that they onboarded into it. And when you're a single vendor XDR, you basically limit yourself to the type of data sets that your products cover. And that requires, most of the time, that requires the customer to basically reshape his entire security telemetry stack, deploy agents, change big parts of his security environments, and also sometimes even compromise their efficacy, at least to the best of their knowledge. So both of those things combined, I think, are one of the biggest drivers behind our approach of vendor-agnostic or an open XDR, if you may.
And finally, just to help anyone listening understand how it would work in their world, in their workplace, is there any way you can share a use case or something out there that will just help people understanding how it would work in their world?
Yeah, absolutely. So Onboarding Hunters is very straightforward. It's a SaaS. Because we don't have any scanner or agent, or we don't change the environment in any way, you open up the Hunters portal and you start connecting data flows. Those data flows can come directly from the vendors that we're integrating to, but they can also come from other centralized data sources like data lakes. We have a really nice integration with Snowflake, for whoever is familiar with that amazing vendor, and also with other SIEM products and data centralization kind of products. And the idea is that once those data flows are connected, we immediately start analyzing the detections and the raw data that the product that we're connecting to are generating, and populating the graph, and like we said earlier, eventually generating those attack stories that get pushed straight into the customer's existing workflow. So basically, doesn't require a lot of deployment. We're working a lot of creating an experience from a POC perspective that has a very short time to value. We think that it's critical in our world today to be able to demonstrate the value that we're talking about easily. And like with any detection product, sometimes there's nothing in the environment when you're testing it out. So we also have a set of really unique simulations and tests that we can run with the customers to demonstrate that unique capability around detection and response that you can get out of Hunters. And I think the most interesting use case that we're currently covering is the correlation and the connection between the enterprise network, meaning the secure web gateways and proxies, the endpoints, the firewalls, with the basically enterprise cloud environment and production environment that runs on cloud infrastructure as a service and containers and whatnot. And that combination of enterprise and cloud is really interesting. And that's one of the gaps that we're now trying to close through our ability to correlate those attack surfaces together. And that generates some really nice results that customers gives us really interesting feedback on. And I think that another thing that is accompanied with that move into those public clouds and offloading more and more compute into there is that also from a security team perspective, not all of the teams have that knowledge internal. So getting that knowledge around detection and response from a vendor makes a lot of sense, that understanding of how attackers operate around those cloud environments.
And for anyone listening that would like to find out more information about the world of extended threat detection and response, and equally all the work that you're doing at Hunters there, what's the best way of finding you guys online, joining your community, or even sending a question to a member of your team? What's the best way of doing that?
Absolutely. So make sure to follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, and we also always post interesting stuff there. You can always reach directly to me or visit our website and request for more information or even set up a demo call. Would love to jump on an introductory call like that and explore together with you basically how Hunters could benefit your environment.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, XDR is an emerging hot category at the moment. And I love how you guys at Hunters are the first autonomous threat hunting solution that is pure play vendor agnostic. You've also been mentioned in Gartner, been on the front of TechCrunch there. It's an incredibly exciting year for you and a period of uncertainty as well, which makes it extra special. So I'd love to stay in touch with you and see how this journey continues. But more than anything, just a big thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Neil. It's been an amazing opportunity, and I hope that I haven't bored you too much. But we're excited to keep in touch and have you part of Hunter's journey in the future.
Wow, I don't know about you, but there's no chance of me getting bored in a conversation like that because we covered so much valuable information in a short amount of time. For example, a few takeaways from me from that conversation is learning how XDR has emerged as this next-gen successor to EDR and SIEM, and also why it is different and what it brings to the IT security stack. And in terms of mixed signals, clarifying how XDR finds the signals that are legitimate threats while filtering out the noise. And finally, of course, why a vendor-agnostic approach is essential to success and how Hunters is granting XDR capabilities using artificial intelligence for autonomous threat hunting. So I think it's fair to say we covered a lot in 25 minutes there, haven't we? But I'd love to hear your thoughts, your experiences, and anything around XDR. In fact, anything at all. If you've just got a question you want to ask me, whatever it is, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. If you need help with business blogs or launching your own podcast, we can do that. Or there's over 1,300 interviews, not to mention 2 other podcasts. Tech Fusion with Citrix, hosted by myself, and Switched On Thinking with Netgear. But then I do realise as I've said that out loud, I run the risk of being in far too many places and being borderline annoying. So I'm going to sneak out the back door now and say a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.